panelists with me. We're starting to let our guests trickle in. We've got 60, 70, up to 80. I'm just going to give it a little minute to get that number up to the 200 plus that we have expected in our seminar today. I don't want to start my introduction without you all here. So we're at 150, up to 160, 70. Great, lovely to see so many of you here with us. Cool, and the number seems to be settling now, so I'm going to start. It's just a standard housekeeping introduction, so feel free to keep trickling in as you come through. Great, hello everyone. It's great to see so many of you here today. I do know that there are some of you that would like to have joined us but couldn't. Our very own Robin Townley, the ABTT Chief Executive, is on furlough, but he has asked me in his absence to extend to you all a very warm welcome. He offers us his best wishes and the hope that we will all take away something stimulating, useful and helpful from this programme of seminars, in addition to the companionship that coming together provides. I'd like to echo what Robin has said and now welcome you all formally on behalf of the ABTT to this seminar session. It's brought to you today by the ABTT Training and Education Committee, and the title is Technical Training in a New World. Before I hand you over to our seminar host, let me first go through some housekeeping, just some advice on this webinar platform. Finally, you may find it useful just to pop up to the right-hand tab and switch from speaker view to gallery view. This way you'll be able to see all of the panelists on your screen at once, although Sebastian is screen sharing, so that might be that might have a different view for you. There are two functions at the bottom. You can use the chat function to shout out to fellow attendees and to let us know where in the country you come from today. I know that we've got some international people with us. You can also use this chat to share your thoughts. Alicia will be monitoring this section and will be on hand to help. Our panelists can also see that chat function as well. What we do ask though is that if you have a question that you'd like answering, that you pop that in the Q&A tab at the bottom. So you can direct that to one panelist or all of them. Feel free to write them as they come to you, but there will be designated sections in the seminar where the panel can respond to them. We do ask that you're patient with us. There are a lot of you in today's session, over 200, and while we would like to get through as many as possible, it may not be possible to answer them all. So lastly, as a reminder to the panel, but also to all of you, that we will be recording today's session and this will be made available to people that weren't able to attend. So I just wanted to hand over to Sebastian Barnes, who will be your chair and lead today's session. I did also want to highlight to you that I will be helping Alicia administrate this session. I am also on the panel as well, so just bear with me as I pop two hats on for this particular seminar. I hope you enjoy it. Sebastian, over to you.
Thank you very much. Welcome to one of the first series, hopefully, of webinars from the ABTT. This one, as you can see from your screen, Technical Training in a New World. I chair the Training and Education Committee. This is a list of our panelists. Well, you can read them yourself. Rachel Nicholson, Principal of the Backstage Academy. Ros Madison, Head of Production, Royal Conservatoire of Scotland. Tamykha Patterson, Freelance Lighting Programmer. Joe Franklin, Head of Technical Theatre Arts from the GSA. Peter McCoy, Productions Course Leader, Royal Central School, and Mig, who introduced this, the lighting tutor, also at the GSA. So what we're going to do is tackle three issues that we think are important to technical training. We're going to tackle these as a discussion between the panelists and then take Q&A prompted from Mig in the last half hour of our 1.5 hour session. So if we move straight on to the first one, because this is what it's all about, where do we go from here? I put in a couple of bullet points that might trigger off a discussion. The effects of continuing social distancing. How far do we need to do it? How long do we need to do it for? And what is the value of online learning in that? Those are just 2 bullet points. Which of my wonderful panelists would like to start commenting on training and education? Where do we go from here? Go, Peter.
Yes, it's an interesting one. And for those who don't know me, I'm also on the OISTAT, which is the International Organization of Scenography, Theatre Architecture and Technology. They have an education commission, and we've had a number of international discussions about this effect internationally. I think one of the main effects of the social distancing, and by that I probably mean having to work from home, has been the intermittent access to Wi-Fi. And certainly when you're teaching students or interacting with them, it drops in and out. Some people have really powerful computers at home, some don't. So the provision of Wi-Fi and technology is difficult across the board. The other thing is people get Zoom fatigue, which those who attend lots of these discussions may well by the end of the day, but actually it is very tiring staring at the screen all day. We're not used to it, and sort of engaging with that. The plus side that we found is that some of the less kind of outgoing students actually find this as a better and easier forum to contribute, and they're becoming more contributory to some of the sessions that are going on. And sort of actually getting more out of it. They're not sitting at the back, not saying anything, they're actually coming forward and doing it. So I think that's a good thing. We've also found that there are some things that we're offering that are better offered online. So some of the kind of recorded sessions that have happened, students have found that better than actually sitting in the class, listening to a lecture or looking at a demonstration, because they can stop a recording and go back and have a look at something they didn't understand and go through it again. So that's some of the, I think, pros and cons of it. But it is difficult. And a lot of the students that I teach and around the world are finding the isolation really difficult. They're missing their colleagues. They're missing that interaction with other people. And that's a very hard thing to do anything about until we're allowed to, I think.
Ros, can we have your perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree with what Peter was saying there. I think it's had different effects on different individuals, depending on all sorts of things, whether it's technical connections or technical ability, or in terms of using IT equipment, and also in terms of personality, and just whether people feel comfortable sitting at a screen sharing things, either more comfortable or less comfortable than if they were doing it in person. I think one of the things that we've come across is actually in production practice, actually working on productions, which is primarily what we do at the Conservatoire. There are very little classroom activities as such. It's all about putting on shows. And there's been lots of things that we've come across that we've thought, actually, do you know what, this works a lot better like this. And we've always been afraid of Skyping somebody into a production meeting because it'll be awkward and there won't be a connection. Well, we've got no excuse now. Actually, we can bring people in from all over the world for a production meeting and make sure everybody's in the room and they're all seeing the same information. The other thing is actually uploading information before the meeting, so that well in advance of the discussion, everyone in each department has had a chance to fully digest what's about to happen, and then they're ready with the questions, and the meetings therefore are getting a lot shorter. There's a lot less need to have lengthy conversations about things because a lot of the conversations are happening in advance. So that's one of the things that we've kind of come across. And I think as well in terms of teaching, things like Vectorworks, things like, anything that would have been a discussion group, anything that would have been a lecture-based experience is actually far more effective online. It's far more accessible. It can be recorded. You can do it from wherever you want to do it from. So in terms of sustainability, it's going to cut down on travel time for those students who have to travel a distance to get into college. If you're only coming in for a particular thing, if that thing can happen online, then that's reducing the carbon footprint just a little bit. So anything that we can do in that direction is obviously going to be beneficial. Just a little bit about social distancing. Obviously, we're talking about online activity. Online activity is something that we are planning for in terms of an interim period. and some things we will find to be better online, and therefore we'll keep them in that mode. But obviously we all want to get back in the workshops, we all want to get back on stages. So I think the social distancing side of things is going to become the new norm for the time being. We are going to have to find ways of putting rehearsal rooms in grids. We are going to have to find, have really strict cleaning regimes, and making sure that everybody is washing their hands regularly. It's no bad thing probably, but we just can't keep cleaning tools every time somebody touches them. So the default position needs to be that everyone needs to be cleaning their hands before they touch the tools. So all of these kind of things, I think, will become the new norm. And again, I think some of them will end up staying. I think some of them will end up being kind of embedded as good practice, regardless of whether or not you can be 2 meters, 1 meter, or 5 centimeters away from somebody. Actually, it's quite good practice to wash your hands regularly and to make sure you're giving people personal space when required. So I think, because of what we're going through, we are doing some things that will naturally just stay with us, I think, is my main point.
I agree entirely. The example that comes to my mind is the inevitable sharing of the company flu that happens during a pantomime run. I think we're going to see a change in this. Does anybody else want to chip in on that one?
Yep, I can chip
Go
in.
for it.
I would echo some of what Peter and Ros have said. We've obviously moved over to online learning, which has been interesting, challenging, different. We're very lucky in that we, being part of a massive university, we do have a very well-established infrastructure for online learning, a virtual learning environment, which the students are all used to using. And there are some things, as Ros has said, that actually you can do better online, that a student can review something in their own time. They don't necessarily have to sort of turn up at a particular time and place. There's the sustainability aspects of that. On the downside, it has pointed up some accessibility issues for us. Not all students have a lovely MacBook at home and a quiet place to work and good Wi-Fi connection. So the gaps between people who have access to that and people who don't have really widened. And if we're moving forward with online learning, which we will be, that's something we really need to address. There's a lot of talk in the industry about a lack of accessibility to people from different backgrounds, a lack of diversity. If we can't get this right in online learning, that just widens the gap, I think. And in terms of the social distancing, it is going to be something we have to think about. It's what I find, we all like planning, don't we? We all like to know exactly what's going to happen and when it's going to, when it's going to resolve and exactly how far the distancing is going to be. And I think one of the difficult things for everybody at the moment is we don't really know. We don't really know how long these restrictions are going to go on. We don't know whether they might change from 2 meters to 1 meter. We don't know what protocols are going to be. So we're just going to have to be very, very responsive to what's going on in the industry, and maybe plan as far as we can, but be very, very flexible in how we interpret that going forward in the way that it will change and evolve as time goes on. But like all these difficult issues, good things will come out of it. What they will be, we will see, but I know there will be good things coming out of it at the end. I
agree very much with that, and I'm very much aware that certainly with our courses, the ABTT courses, we're currently, yesterday's Training and Education Committee started discussing how and when we could deliver very practical courses. And for example, the flying module, part of one of the modules, is going to be particularly challenging to do, and a lot of fly floors in theatres where you can't get more than 1 or 2, if you're lucky, people there at once. And we need a minimum of 6 to 8 to make a course run. I am very encouraged that our industry is particularly innovative and will, as you've started to suggest, come up with, or indeed already begun to come up with, innovative solutions to these sorts of issues. Tamykha, can I come to you and ask, what's your experience of online learning, whether it be technical related or otherwise?
So just a bit of background about myself. So I am an ABTT Young Associate Representative and a former apprentice. So I was an ATG apprentice, technical theatre apprentice. To keep going and learning and pushing forward and to try and be better at what I do when we come out of this, I have been signed up to loads of online seminar webinars and training put on by people like companies like ETC, Vectorworks and things like that, just to keep myself going, and I guess trying to not only to better my skill, but to keep the basis there, because I've currently been out of work for almost 3 months. And with me, I went freelance May 2019. So it's all very, very new to me. And I was just on a roll where I was understanding my craft and getting good at it. And so I think just trying to pick out what is available and what is out there. And the ABTT do publish on social media loads of courses and resources that are out there for you to build your skills and knowledge. So I think that's really important, just to keep going. And I mean, if it's not in the workplace, I saw someone put something up about apprenticeships and it being workplace training. I think I mean, there's skills out there, there's resources out there. So I think that's probably the best way to go, because you are not part of a technical training course. And with me, when I was doing my apprenticeship, the college wasn't so tech savvy. It was quite hard because they didn't really understand, but that was about 5 years ago. So I'm hoping now that the colleges that do support these apprenticeships have a better understanding and can support apprenticeships along the way during these times.
Yeah, I agree with you very much on that, and I won't get started on my particular opinions of what you've just suggested, what you've just said about colleges not understanding our industry. One direct question to me: how do you think apprenticeships could work in this new world we're about to go into?
It's a hard one, because like I said, it's work-based learning. And from conversations that I've had with producing houses, and I understand that some apprentices are from receiving houses, but I feel that many companies, many theatres are very conscious. They know that you are there, and they want to, as well as students, to push forward and give you work and to have a place for you and to welcome you into our community. Whether you're graduating and you're going to start work in September or starting your apprenticeship in September, I think that loads of people are aware that. And another thing, sorry, kind of going off, with what's happening and being in lockdown, a good thing that's come from it is a sense of community and to giving back. And I think that is a beautiful thing that's come out of it. And loads of companies now, like when we start back, loads of theatres, when we start back, we want to include young people building up. We want to build the next generation of creatives, of technicians, of stage management. So I think that is something that's on people's minds, and they're looking at ways to help people go forward.
Yeah, that's very good. While you were talking, I was thinking a lot of theatres and the way that theatres work is going to be done in a different way. And although I'm also a staunch Back2 member, I have to recognise that a lot of theatres will move towards multi-skilled roles rather than specific skilled roles. Just no question, just something to consider along the way. Just before we move on to the next point, Rachel, do you have any take on this one?
Hi, thanks, Sebastian. Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that is a particular challenge is, I agree with Tamykha. I mean, I absolutely applaud and commend our sector for the generosity that they've shown all learners, regardless of whether they're on a degree course or a college course or they're apprentice, for the generosity of providing students with free materials, providing students with courses, generating content has been fantastic. And it's been really, it's been really
reassuring to be able to point to that, to point to the support that the sector is giving to students when we get phone calls from parents of applicants saying, actually, I'm worried about my child going into this as a career path. I've seen what's happened to the industry. Is this really a good career for my child to go into? And we can say confidently, yes, of course we're having challenges and difficulties at the moment, but as a community, I mean, you know, we're second to none, and the level of support, I think, you know, everybody needs to be commended for, has been fantastic. One of the things that I would sort of say, just jumping all the way back to the online learning, and some of the sort of challenges of that, is that yes, there are a number of benefits that we found, and I would absolutely agree with comments that colleagues have made here, but also things that we also need to give. We've had to change our approach, and I think it's important to sort of say and to recognise that what a lot of us have had to do is make very, very rapid change around the end of March into April to get us through to the end of the academic year. What we're all now trying to do is work out how we learn the lessons from that, and actually how we change our pedagogy to actually then develop, to be able to continue to deliver really fantastic quality education from September onwards. And that's not the same as the sort of the rapid change that we've had to make, because we're having to look at something that might last for the entirety of the academic year. So where we are as educators at the moment, and I think, you know, Joe said, it's a very, very live situation. I'm sure I'm not on my own, you know, I'm looking with interest at the comments and the questions that are coming. Everybody is looking at the information and the ideas that are coming out. One of the ideas that I think is particularly interesting and potentially relevant to both the sector for education, but also in terms of theatres, live events, and getting events up and running again, is Melvin Ben's idea from Festival Republic. I don't know if any of you are aware of that. His idea for a full capacity plan, which if anybody, I can send a link or share a PowerPoint if that's helpful. That as a proposal, the idea being that what happens if our sector makes use of the government's track and trace technology and says, well, actually, if you've done that and within a frame time you get a certificate to say that you've been tested, does that then enable you to go to a live event, to go to a venue and actually be with as a level of security? And that might be the sort of thing that enables us to get you know, social experiences back on track. And so I love the sort of the positivity and the ideas that are coming. And I think as long as we're sharing, and that includes the students, because some of our students have come up with fantastic ideas and are contacting us directly to say, this is how we think we could open in September. This is what we think we could do. And that's brilliant. I love that energy and it's fantastic and I absolutely welcome it. And I'm sure everybody else from seeing the nods is getting, you know, the same sort of positivity and responses from their students, which is brilliant. But I do think we need to look at as you say, the question that you asked right at the beginning is personal. It is a new world. So we can't just directly take what we were doing before and then just sort of slap it into what we were doing. We need to find a new way forward. And, you know, and I think none of us quite know what that is yet. And I think it's going to be different for different institutions. And I think that's great because we are all different and we want to stay all different. But I do think that we need to have further sort of discussions at a higher level and representation about how can we move this forward? How can we get people into, you know, small, maybe starting off with smaller venues and small audience sizes? What can we do that at least then would enable collaboration, which is the one thing that we've kind of not talked about in terms of student experience, is the collaboration from technical students and performance students, from technical students with each other. How do we actually enable that? Because that's a really important part of people's training, is those professional soft skills as well.
That's wonderful, Rachel. Thank you. Yes, it would be very helpful if you could post that link in the chat. The recording of this saves the chat as a separate text, and then we can disseminate it on our website, certainly. Ros, you've got a point.
Yeah, can I just say, just on the back of some of the things that Rachel was saying there, the thing that's I've been so proud of over the last however long it's been, three months now, I've lost count of them, has been actually the positive response of the production students within the Conservatoire. And I'm not at all getting at the performance students, because I know they have their own issues and concerns, but from a production point of view, the students they've shown a resilience, they've shown a positivity and a willingness to engage with what's going on in a really fantastic way. And I think I saw a comment in one of the chat boxes there pop up saying, is it worth me coming next year to a course, or should I just wait for a year? No, come now, because actually the creative problem solving, the challenges that we're dealing with just now are going to be so instrumental in your education. It's going to be so fantastic to be involved in that. And I appreciate it's not the experience that you maybe thought you were going to get when you auditioned or interviewed for the program, but it will be a valid and it will be a worthwhile experience. And we're all working really, really hard to make sure that that's the case right across the board for continuing students, for graduating students, and of course for new students coming in. So it will be a little bit different in the way that it looks, but ultimately that can only benefit you in terms of your employability and your resilience, and like I said, the creative problem solving. So I just wanted to put that in there, that it's not about everything's going to be horrendous next year. It's very much about we're doing it slightly differently, but it's still going to be a really, really positive experience. And I think that's the case for all of the kind of the independent courses and training opportunities as well. They'll be a bit different. We're having to make sure that what we're doing is fit for purpose under the conditions, rather than just saying, let's take that and shove it online, because that just wouldn't work. But it will be a really positive experience. So please don't start saying, I'm going to put my education on hold for a year, because let's face it, what else are you going to do? There's not going to be any jobs out there. So you may as well come along and make sure that you're prepared for whatever it looks like in 3 years' time.
Absolutely.
Thanks, sorry, I just wanted to make that point.
No, thank you very much, Ros. And you've neatly segued to the next area we're going to discuss, is how do students and apprentices start their careers now? What motivation? Well, you've just intimated that. How do they promote their skills? So who wants to start off with this one? How do students and apprentices start their careers now?
I just wanted to start with the motivation thing. That's been a I think there's extremes. There are people who are going, oh dear, it's all too much, and people are going, okay, right, this is difficult times, but that's given me even more determination to carry on. We've been overwhelmed by the generosity. I think it was Rachel said, so many people have offered to help, have offered to mentor students, support students, buddy students, come and give talks. I mean, the generosity of people in the industry has been absolutely amazing. And throughout, we've all been saying to the students, and I know our visiting speakers have as well, people will want to go back to the theatre and events after this is over. People will be desperate to get back into that communal setting with other people. So you do have to be a bit self-motivated, but I think the support of the whole industry has sort of G'd the students up to feel that it is still out there for them. In the interim, some are looking at other options, maybe different jobs that might increase their transferable skills in other ways, but with still the long-term determination to get into the entertainment industry. How can we, sorry, what was the second question again?
How to promote your skills. These are only little bullet points under the whole thing of how do people start their careers if they're starting their career now.
Our normal way of promoting has obviously gone a bit out of the window this year, given that, you know, we haven't been able to do the normal exhibition or networking event or come along to the actual ABTT show. What we did, and I'm sure other institutions have done this as well, is set up a sort of, give the students a virtual showcase, a sort of online place to display what they've done, and we've sent out as much information as we can on the students to all of our industry contacts. So I hope that's given a bit of a boost and a bit of a leg up into the industry. We've also set up a separate space on our website called the GSA Green Room, which is a space for graduating students and alumni to share their projects and ideas, and that's for all GSA students, performance and production and technical. So as an institution, we've been trying to help people get that sort of that leg up into motivating themselves to continue towards their ultimate goals, supported by so many brilliant people who've come to help us. Hope that answers the question.
Yes, it does. And I'm tempted to ask, yes, the elephant in the room, how long before you think we, the education sector, need to promote that angle? How long before enough theatre organisations are going to be robust enough to look at re-employing? I know it's a real guess, but just opinions from all of you?
I mean, there's really no way of knowing that, is there? All we can do is support our students and graduates to be ready when that does happen, because none of us can predict that, as far as I know. I have felt, I'm sure everybody else has too, that all the certainties I've had about this industry for the last 30 years have slightly gone out of the window in the past few months. I've always seen it's quite robust, something that's easy to forge a freelance career. Those certainties have changed, and all we can do is admit that this is a live situation and be agile and ready for whatever happens, whatever the world throws at us over the next few months, years, whatever that might be.
Yeah, okay. That was a nasty question to ask, but I mean, it's
Well,
one that
it's
we all consider.
It's certainly shaking us out of old ways of thinking, which is brilliant. That's always a good thing to do, isn't it?
Oh, I agree entirely. I was in a phone conversation with someone a week ago where we were musing about how you could do stand-up with a virtual audience. Do you have two big screens in the auditorium that 150 audience are on, and the stand-up artist does it on stage and interacts with them somehow? I mean, the technology's there, but yes, you're quite right, innovation. Who else wants to chime in with this one? Go on, Peter.
I'll probably be slightly controversial with this, but
it's your
there's
job.
Always a kind of I know it is. There's always a slightly, a weeding process with the less dedicated, passionate graduates, moving into a different career fairly early on. So I think that might happen a bit earlier. I actually spoke to a graduate who's been successful, and they actually said that they felt that this would be professionally, there might be quite a lot of people deciding that they're not going to go back into the industry. So actually there could be more work for younger people coming into it later on, which is, it's interesting, and we'll see. Who knows? But I think that's possible. You've got to be dedicated and passionate about it and not want to do anything else to continue, which is kind of what it's like anyway. So
I do agree with you on that point, Peter, about people finding they've got out of the industry and they said, actually, I don't want to go back in, or I can't afford to go back in.
I can't afford to.
People of a certain age will remember the dearth of skills that sort of leached out of the theatre industry over the 70s and 80s as theatres got less and less funding and people found their cost, I can't afford to have a family, either socially or financially. Doing production weeks every 4 weeks at 60, 70 hours a week just doesn't work. I've known a lot of people who've moved out of the industry, and I tend to agree with you. This is another example of what is likely to happen. No,
that's a different. Sorry, that's a different topic, isn't it? But there are moves, afoot, to be much more inclusive and sustainable, within the industry. And there are now job sharing, schemes for ASMs, things like that, so that they can go off and have families, which is a really positive thing. And hopefully that will continue, and maybe this will, will enable that to continue.
Rachel,
I think it's an opportunity to change the industry and make it more sustainable and more inclusive.
Absolutely, I agree entirely. Rachel, you were waving. Unmute button, quick. There you go.
I absolutely support what Peter's saying, but I do also think that when you're a young person, you need to try as many different things as possible. Because actually, number one, it makes you a better practitioner. Number two, our industry changes very rapidly. The technologies that we use, the skills we require changes. Some things stay the same naturally, but obviously there's a lot of progression, there's a lot of crossover. And I think that one of the things that worries me is that in the loss of those graduate roles, those work placement opportunities, those volunteer opportunities that so many students benefit from, that enables them to try a particular area of work or a particular area of practice or a sector, an area within the sector, that if those dry up, that we then may see people, as Peter indicates, dropping out who perhaps otherwise would have found their place within the industry, or worse, that actually we lose that richness, that diversity of people, because people can't afford to stay within the sector, and that we all start to look a little bit the same. Do you know what I mean? In terms of the range of skills that we have, in terms of the personality types that we are. And I think diversity leads to creativity. And I think, obviously, with everything that's going on at the moment with Black Lives Matter, but I think it's above and beyond all of those things, because I think it's about, about creating a collective community event in live performance. And I think that requires, a broad range of different types of people with a broad range of different types of skill sets, from a broad range of different types of backgrounds. Different people's stories, need to be heard. And so what would worry me is that it would put off people who perhaps don't have family in the industry, or don't really, who are sort of first generation, if you like, theatre practitioners, who are pioneering a way through, that actually there aren't the opportunities to give them that lift up, give them that support, to give them the opportunity to try. And I think all students deserve the opportunity to try. So I would kind of really appeal that where possible, and I know that it's the first thing that for companies, sadly, in these very difficult times, when you're looking at redundancy and you're looking at having to furlough staff, that graduate internship work placement opportunities, and I'm talking particularly around manufacturers and companies that might still be open, are the first sort of ones to go. But I would ask, what could you offer? Could you offer somebody a couple of weeks of work placement? Could you offer somebody an opportunity, or just talk about, come and join a panel and talk about what you do within your sector, to kind of share, what the sector, what the area is about, what the opportunities are, because not everybody who trains in technical theatre ends up working backstage. Some people work for our supply chain, which is, again, is massive, is extensive, but is equally under threat. And there are lots of different departure points for people as they join this career. And I would just ask that if there's any opportunity for manufacturers or companies to consider making either volunteer or work placement, or even to hold on to that graduate level job and give somebody a chance, that they don't automatically dismiss it, and that we seek to find these opportunities for people coming into the industry, because they will be your future employees, and you want to keep the best people.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. I'm going to throw this one at Tamykha. You're not, as the other panelists, educationalists, you're a recipient, you're a practitioner. What's your take on this? I mean, some of what you said in the previous question does cover this. Please expand.
Yeah, I think I'm just going to answer some questions that have been in the chat going on.
By all means.
I think that there was a question about expanding the time frame of an apprenticeship, and whether we think this should be a thing. My personal experience doing an apprenticeship, the college work was all work-based. So my apprenticeship was based in London, and my college was not, so it was all online. So that side of things I could do online if it was me. I didn't have to go into college at all. I do think the practice in the workplace should be extended. And I think it's such a valuable thing. And you also see how much you've grown, because when I started my apprenticeship, I knew absolutely nothing. It would be like get-ins and I'd be all over the place. And it got to, mine was only a year, halfway through, and people were like, we only want, example, 9 people on the crew, not 10. And you just see how much you build up, and then also making connections and I guess just building yourself as a technician. And also, whether you're doing like a lighting apprenticeship or a technical theatre, you have done part of your apprenticeship and only focused on a certain sector, certain part. So I done a technical apprenticeship. It was split into lighting, sound, flies and stage. For example, I may have missed out during this lockdown lighting and sound, which is then kind of put you back. So I do think it's really important to carry on the work-based learning, even if you do your college work and that's finished, but for the theatres and institutes, just to push it further, so you get the 2 years that you basically signed up for, and that you don't miss out. I think that's really important. I think in a way as well, apprenticeship, like me, I'm freelance, and there's not really like a sense of belonging. Like, you don't really belong anywhere. Like when you're a technical student as part of a technical college, you have a nice base of students that you've got, teachers, and with me it was myself, one, as a technical apprentice at New Wimbledon Theatre, and now I'm a freelancer. I do not belong to a building, so I think it's really important. I'm going to talk about how we can have ways to kind of make like an apprenticeship community for people to come in and to talk and to feel like they belong, and they can talk to people that are sharing similar experiences. So I'm definitely going to look into that to kind of get that going. Yes.
That's very interesting. I particularly like to pick up 2 points. One, apprenticeships. I'm an assessor for the new standards in apprenticeships, and they've moved from being 1 year to 2 years maximum. The employers set the limit generally at about 18 months. The government funding for that dictates that they must do at least 12 months and a day before they're put forward for their final assessment. The standards and the recommend 18 months minimum. So between 18 and 24 months, they've got a 3 to 4 month window to do that final assessment, to be fully ready to do the assessment. So I think that should be fit as long as the government retain that framework. I don't see why they shouldn't, because they've extended that principle across apprenticeships in every sector in the country. We're one of the last to catch up with it. Networking, and I very much hear you about being a freelancer and out on your own, and I very much like the idea of ways of promoting networks. You might want to connect with Beck too, possibly. Certainly through the last 2 months, Beck 2 groups of people, whether they're branches or not, with similar job roles, have created their own networks using one or more of the social platforms to share their experiences, to share the understanding of what employers are doing or not doing. You can probably tell I'm hedging around suggesting that they're using them to blacklist certain employers, but essentially that's what some of them do. They say, look, this company is paying well under what we should. Please don't take any employment with them for the moment. So there are those that exist. We're approaching sort of giving us, we've got 45 odd minutes left or just under. Does anyone have any other particular points on how to start careers before we move to that last point? Although I think we've covered most of the last point. Go on, Joe.
I just wanted to pick up on something I just saw in the comments about somebody's concern that parents will discourage children attending courses in this sector, in technical theatre, either apprenticeships or degrees or diplomas. I think the way to look at this is, and the way I present it in Open Days, is that it doesn't matter if your training doesn't lead to a lifelong career in the theatre. When you're 18 years old and you're picking a degree course or an apprenticeship, that's what you want to do at that point, but you may well change, you may decide to do something else, and a theatre training is never wasted. It is good for everything. I've had students go off to do teaching, to go on to retail graduate schemes, to do all sorts of different things down the years. And they've, without exception, come back and said, a theatre training has been absolutely invaluable for me in the sector I've gone into. So that's the way to present it to parents. It doesn't matter what happens, what you decide to do 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the line. That training will always be valuable. And we all know why that is, because, working in the theatre is one of the best preparations for life. So that's the way I present it. So trying to sell it to the parents.
Wonderful, thank you. Any other comments? And then I suggest we probably skip the last slide because I think we've covered it mostly up to this point. Peter.
Just to add to what Joe said, I mean, if you come on a course like, a sort of specialist theatre course, you actually get to do live events. You actually get to do it. You handle a budget. You manage people, which you don't if you do a management degree. So I mean, that's how I would sell it to parents. Absolutely, their children will run a project with a sizable budget and with a big group of very disparate people they're having to manage, and come out of that the other end with that experience. So yeah.
Was that your hand waving, Ros?
Yes, sorry,
Go
somewhere
for
in
it.
the greenery. It's disappearing.
Yes, I know.
Yeah, no, again, I was wanting to pick up on, there are a few questions coming in about, providing laptops for students and digital poverty, and it's a real issue. Obviously, there are students, whether they're apprentices or whether they're on training, want to do it one-day training courses, or whether they want to come on a degree, who genuinely just cannot afford to buy a laptop, and not a good enough laptop to run Vectorworks or to run Photoshop or whatever it is that they need to engage in those courses. I think one of the big issues, and it's probably not widely recognized yet, but it will be very soon, is that higher education is not rich. There is not a lot of money swimming around that we can suddenly start saying, oh, we're going to buy everybody a laptop. There may be in some pocket, there may be some universities that have that kind of slush fund and are able to do that, but certainly in the arts sector, those HE institutions, further education colleges that's are specifically there for the performing arts, are not rich. There is not a lot of money running around, and I think it's about campaigning. I think it's about getting onto your local MP, or getting onto your whoever your Minister for Education or your Minister for Culture is, or whichever country you're in, and saying, do you know what, we cannot afford for this to go down. And we've seen petitions and things popping up on Facebook and what have you. Keep signing them, because unless these young people, old people, whatever people they are, unless all of these individuals are able to engage in the education in the way that they need to, then there's going to be some real difficulties. And I think the expectation is, oh well, the university should be buying them all a laptop each. We just cannot afford to do that. We just can't. It's as simple as that. And it's the royal we I'm speaking. I think there's some few nodding heads from the panel there. I think everybody's in agreement that, obviously there are pockets of support that we can maybe, focus towards individual students and individual circumstances, but as a blanket, let's get them all a laptop. It's just not going to be possible. So just to kind of take the elephant out of the room there, I'm afraid it is a real issue, and we would love to be able to resolve it, but without some kind of cash injection or some kind of support from government in that area, then it's going to be tough.
That's very useful. That's very, thank you very much for that. As I said at the beginning of just before your point, I think we've answered the last issue pretty much. What are the benefits of continuing training in technical theatre? So I suggest that we go over and pick up as many Q&As as we can. Is that you waving, Mig?
It is me waving. I'm just very conscious that I've been tip-tapping away and I've not said anything, and I feel terrible. So
all right, your turn.
So
and then please feed us some questions.
Absolutely, I will start. So I've been trying to keep an overview of some of the conversations, and you guys have been great. So I guess I can offer a very quick summary to all of these questions, because the reason that I endeavoured to embark on this mission to curate this series of seminars was because I felt it was the only thing that I could do as a course leader and a tutor for my students. The only thing that I felt that I could engage in to show that education and industry are not separate entities, and that actually the two are part and parcel with one another. And every tutor, every teacher here, Tamykha, yourself, we exist in discussions with industry, and it has just been the driving force behind my entire ethos as an educator. I very much brand myself as a teacher, but also still a freelance practitioner, and I'm very much missing not being on site at the moment. And so for me, it's about bringing education and industry together to begin to have those discussions. And what's fabulous about this panel that I have here today is that they bring a wealth of experience and excellence that I think can help industry also. So I'm hoping that a lot of these discussions can move forward. But from my point of view, I'm here putting myself out there. making sure that everybody out there knows that I want industry to open, and if I can be pivotal in any way in making that happen faster by putting all the right people in the right room to discuss it. As educators, we're really good at that. That's what we do. We have the training in order to do that. So I hope that that answers the motivation behind some of it, but also, you know, I massively don't have the answers to some of these questions. Lots of people are talking about, am I online learning? Am I not going to bother putting people up a ladder to regular light anymore? So I'm a lighting tutor? Absolutely not. If there is a way of getting my students up a ladder in October, you best believe I'm getting them up a ladder in October. And that is why I have self-invited myself into these meetings to find out how Pirate Crew are putting people up ladders, because there are live events happening, and I would encourage you to go to the health and safety one. I know it's sold out, but we will be broadcasting it on Facebook. But the Royal Opera House have live shows on Saturday. Fairies did not rig the lights for that. They did, you know, there are stage managers running that show. So let's find out how they're doing it. You know, let's get in a room with the health and safety director of the Royal Opera House to find out how they're doing that, so that I can get to their health and safety method statements and risk assessments and put them into a classroom, so that I can still get my students up a ladder, so that I can still get my construction students in a workshop. That's the inspiration behind this. But anyway, let's go through some questions. Feel free, guys, to look into your Q&A panel. And there was one on mental health. I feel like if I don't answer that, that would be
Yes, please do, or point it at one.
As a mental health advocate. So how do we make it part of the new norm to help students, graduates and professionals to access resources for mental health awareness and support? So I'll click that, I'll answer that live. So without giving too much away, I will be talking more about this in the mental health panel. But most of the people in this room are probably aware that we were discussing prior to, you know, a bug going around, that we were going to have an educational panel that got a steering group that got together to look at having a cohesive way of delivering mental health guidance and awareness. This all came out of the mental health research survey that we did. We launched at Plaza. So it's just somewhat on a back burner at the moment, because of course the industry's shut and there's other priorities at the moment, but I'm sure we will resume that at some point. I certainly, and we will talk about this in the seminar, have experienced changes in my own mental health condition as a result of the lockdown, and I'm sure people that don't have mental health conditions probably have started to have some as a result of this. There was another chat on here about how students are working collaboratively online. So I've set paper projects for my students, and it's actually been a really interesting, incredible thing to do. But collaborating in a Zoom room is not the same. It's not the same as collaborating in real life. So there have been some teething issues of students that have got on better with that. Some people have not felt comfortable with their video on. I've got bipolar. If I have a day where I'm not feeling great, I don't want to show you my face. I don't really want to see anybody's face. So the video thing and always staring at your face is a real issue going forward. So if we're going to continue on this platform, I think we do need to educate ourselves a little bit more and be kinder to ourselves, because we're staring at a computer screen all of the time. But I guess in answer to that question, there was in place plans to get us all together as educators and have a more cohesive message, because if you read the mental health study, we do have quite a high percentage of people with mental health conditions coming into the sector. So we were going to look to try and tackle that at the education level, so that we better educated people on well-being and looking after their own mental health going into the industry. And we want to continue doing that, but just bear with us as we deal with a few other things.
That's an understatement. So are there any other particular, yes, Rachel, have you got a question or a comment?
Just to follow up on what Mig was saying in terms of sort of mental health support, one of the things that we've actually found, I agree with the points you're making, the challenges that working online can present from a mental health point of view. One of the things that we've found is that it's enabled us to actually offer, we've had to, because students have wanted it, but we've been able to identify where there are needs for additional pastoral care. That we've been able to schedule regular one-to-ones with students, perhaps students who are in their student accommodation and haven't been able to go home because of COVID, of risk, etc., and managing that. So we've been able to monitor through the online technologies levels of student engagement, which has meant that we've identified before a student has felt comfortable coming to us that there might be a problem, and we've been able to start a conversation with people, which is, I would say, is a benefit of working online that perhaps we didn't have before.
That's very good. Ros, you've got a comment?
Yeah, just again picking up another question from the side there. Someone's asking, is it worth going back for your final year of drama school, or should you defer for a year or whatever? And it was like I was saying about new students coming in as well. Ultimately, with the industry in the position that's in at the moment, there aren't jobs and things kind of just being handed out for you to get experiences and opportunities. So on that side of it, what else would you do that would be useful to you if you didn't come back and finish off your course? The other thing I would say though is talk whoever your course is with, talk to them about what the provision's going to be. We're in a position at the moment where we haven't been able to share an awful lot with the students because the jigsaw is so complicated. It's not just a case of what classes are going to go online. It's a case of, well, what productions can we do and how are we going to do them and how does that fit into the overall jigsaw of the year? So decisions that we're making about the first week of first term will have an impact on what we're going to do in the last week of the last term. So we have to have the whole picture before we can actually start kind of just discussing that more broadly. But there will be plans in place. So your tutors, your program leaders will be able to say, well, it's not that everything is going to be online. I don't think that is the intention for any of the certainly from the kind of drama college's point of view. But it will be that some elements will need to go online in order for the other practical things to be able to spread out. Obviously, we're not just dealing with curriculum and production throughput, we're also dealing with how many toilets are there for how many people are in the building, and therefore what's the capacity of the building, which has to reduce again. So there's so many jigsaws going on that all need to fit together, but there will be information that some of your staff will be able to share with you. So talk to whoever your school is and find out what they've got that's going to be happening for you for next year. But there will be really valid work going on. There will be some, it's not all going to be on Zoom, and there will be some some practical stuff that you'll find really useful to engage with, and like I said, that's probably more than you would be able to get anywhere else in the current circumstances. So and you'll be all the more prepared for going out into an industry that will still be in flux and still be kind of doing more and more things online and not being able to do or doing whatever we can, but in a socially distanced way. So again, what better place to learn how to do that than in the college course that you're already signed up to. So that was just answering one of the questions that was on the thing.
Joe, you've got something on this?
I just want to say the same thing. We are all working incredibly hard, like literally all the hours God sends, to make next year work in a way that is true to the integrity of what we want to do. So yes, some things will be online, but anything that needs to be practically based training, we will have to find a way to do that, because otherwise we can't deliver what we're paid to deliver. But it's a very complex situation. We have 600 students at GSA across something like 15 different courses. It's so complicated to make that work, and we're working really hard to do it, but we need to maintain the integrity of what we do without killing off all the staff. So that's what we're doing at the moment, and we will let people know as soon as we possibly can.
Whilst there's breath in my body, if I can get my students up a ladder, I will. I cannot, looking at a light on Zoom is not something that us as practitioners advocate, and I'm sure if there is a way of doing it, and that is why we are at the forefront of these conversations to make sure that if there's a way, we will do it.
And it's the same for our performance colleagues. They don't want to teach singing over Zoom. They want to teach singing in a room, and we're doing our absolute best to make sure all of those things can be facilitated fairly across the student body. So that's our aim at the moment.
Peter, you've
our challenge.
A couple of things. I just going back to Mig's point about the mental health issue, I've just shared a link to Industry Minds, which is a website that sets out to support people in the creative arts. I think, which is a really good resource for anybody to have a look at, particularly for graduates. But so there are resources out there as well as within colleges. What we found is there are quite a few things that we have delivered remotely that actually we're going to continue because we found it better. And what it means is we don't need a classroom. We don't need to sit, 12 people, 15, 30 people in a classroom and talk at them, which actually I think will free up resources for the more important things. So we're seeing that as some potential positive things coming out of this in terms of the use of the resource that we have, and the health of people who are actually involved in it. One of the concerns I think we're looking at is, in particular, is it's all right, social distancing and all that, and you can work out how to do that within a venue, within your building, but people have got to live together and they've got to travel, and that's, I have an hour-and-a-half commute either way on a train, and I don't want to necessarily be sitting there, so it's an issue for all of us. We have to look at how we do that. I think many of the students are more concerned about that than they are about coming into a building and working with their peers, where we can find a way to make it safer. So I think there are positives as well.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm going to come in with one of those slightly grumpy old man comment based on what Ros you were saying, and Joe and Peter, about we really need students to finish their courses. We need them to start taking up courses, or in 3 years we're going to face a dearth of trained people coming back into the industry. That doesn't sound like a unionist, but it's practicalities, I think. Do we have any other questions that someone spotted that they would like to tackle? We've got about 20 minutes before a wind up.
There seem to be a few about furloughing that I have tried to answer from a GSA perspective. So people were saying about our teachers being furloughed, is that affecting staff? I'm still all of my teachers are still working. There's still a copious amounts of work to do. We've had a few technicians furloughed, but they're starting to come back now because of course we've got a lot of strategic planning to do going into October. I'm just currently tapping an answer to somebody that's asked about fees and stuff. Unfortunately, my generic answer to that is that none of us
answered that, Mig.
Oh right, yeah, none of us sit at managerial level, so that sits higher up than us. But just please know that we are all furiously working hard, more harder than ever, to try and come up with ways to make this work for you. And in most cases, it is looking like we are going to have to split you up into groups where we're having to teach more and use more resources. So it's really important that you know that.
Yeah, two nods there from Ros and Joe. Is that your opinion, Peter? Split up into groups, bubbles?
Yes. Oh, absolutely, yes. And we're, people may be aware of some of the things that are going on at Central at the moment, but we're actually taking this opportunity to completely revamp how we approach everything, and the opportunity to work in much smaller groups. People, I think that rehearsals, there will be dedicated spaces which only have certain people in it, with deep cleaning when there's a move over from one production to the next or whatever. I think there's a lot of opportunities there. I actually have a question. One of the main issues I think my second years moving into their final year have asked is placements, industry placements, because they're, we're hearing about many of the big theatre companies saying they won't be making anything until January. I think there's a huge fear amongst final year students about how they will go out and actually get that experience in the workplace, with working within a team of professionals, which is different from the experience working in a team of students, who are all learning, and it's a really important and critical side. So I mean, I'm interested in a way, it's a similar thing to the apprenticeship thing, isn't it? Issue. I'm interested in how we can work with industry to actually offer that to students.
That would sound like a question for all of the rest of us. Who wants to pick it up next?
Yeah, I'm sure we're
there
all
are
in the same
nods
position.
there.
Yeah.
Go, Rachel.
I think it would be fantastic if through the ABTT or through other organisations, if there are industry partners who feel that they could offer a placement or an opportunity to a student or recent graduate, that there is some sort of centralisation coordination for actually bringing those together and promoting those to students. I know that we all have our own networks within our own areas. We're not all based in the same part of the country, but I do think that that there is the will within our sector to try to support people, and that people might be able to offer things in different ways. And that might, as things relax, also include, because I don't know, I'm sure that at other institutions, it's not so much an issue within my institution, but other institutions that have international students who come to their institutions to study, who perhaps might not be able to return. What could we do with our broader networks to support people within their own countries? And I mean, obviously we don't currently take international students other than EU students, but for our EU students, that's something that I'd like to be able to point to the extended reach of industry representatives like the ABTT to see what support we could find for people.
Anyone else?
Can I chip in with that?
Yeah, that's the whole point. Let's keep it rolling.
I think that's where the OISTAT Education Commission can be really helpful, because it's mainly representing educators, but also, I mean, across the board, both in terms of vocational and also, technical theatre training, but actually a lot of design. And, there are opportunities within those countries for, international students who are based there to be involved, I think. I mean, clearly the international students who've come over here want to study in the UK, so it's a difficult one to negotiate, but I think it's possible. And we already have had some informal relationships with theatre schools around the world, in the Netherlands and things like that, and exchanges between students. So I think there are possibilities maybe we can look at, particularly in those countries who've come out of lockdown and maybe are in a better position re-COVID than we are at the moment. I won't say any more about that.
One of the main challenges for placements is they're incredibly piecemeal in this country. They're everything from the National Theatre. I've got it on my website, and there's a process, and you write a CV too. Someone phones me on a Friday and says, "Oh, we could really do with an ASA placement on next Monday. Do you want somebody?" So the range of different placements offered are so complex, and it's like the theatre ecosystem itself. It's incredibly complex and incredibly varied. So while we've had lots of individual offers of help, it might be nice to have some way of centralising that. I don't know what that would be, so that organisations who are willing to offer placements could potentially put those opportunities in one place. I'm not quite sure how that would work in the commercial sector, because that often, West End musicals will often be the stage manager giving me a ring because they happen to know me. So it might be nice to have some sort of centrality as we sort of start back up.
It would be worth talking to the London Theatre Consortium, because they've actually been really helpful and are really keen on having a kind of a network of opportunities. I mean, I've spoken to them, they're more interested in having a network of casuals, but actually, I did say, well, placements are as important, and I've had really good contacts through that. But I think absolutely, doing it centrally, it's an organisation that exists centrally that represents small-scale theatres in London. But that's everything from the Donmar to the cockpit and things like that. So it's quite broad, and the Royal Court's part of it. So there are absolutely opportunities there. It is an issue. I mean, one of the things I think we're grappling with is we don't find placements for our students. We actually get them to network and do that themselves. That's going to be really difficult.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, several of our stage management students have said, "Oh, when should I start? I don't want to hassle people, but at the same time, I want to be first in the queue when theatres do reopen." Yeah. We had a very interesting chat with the company manager of the Royal Court, Joni, last week, and she was very open that they would still be welcoming placements back, but now is not the time. So let's just put it off for a few months and let's see where we are in September, October. Which was a helpful reassurance to the current students.
Yeah,
And
that's kind of been the message from the companies in Scotland as well, and working with the Federation of Scottish Theatres to try and find ways for the companies to let us know when they feel they have got gaps, so that we can feed into them. But obviously, you know, wanting to tap into any UK-wide initiatives as well. Just on that point, though, and they may have already been answered, so forgive me if I'm repeating something. But there were a few comments and questions popping up about sharing of resources and sharing of links for either online training or all sorts of things. And I'm wondering if the ABTT have got a role to play here in some kind of COVID response resource page of whether it's you know, we've got a placement, does anybody want it, or you know, here's a training course for this, or whatever. And we've kind of started to create one ourselves for our students. Every time we come across a useful resource or whatever, we're kind of posting it up and what have you. But I'm wondering if there's a ABT training education committee role to have some kind of, you know, list of places you can go for support and links that we can do so.
Yeah,
Rach. Yeah, I completely agree, Ros. We actually do have a list on the ABTT website at the moment.
Great.
We have financial resources, training resources, any potential jobs that might be being offered as well. It is all available on there, and I will make sure to post the links on the chat function for you all now.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rachel.
We have that. We have a similar thing on the Backstage Academy website, which is open to everybody, not just sort of students. It's open to everybody. So when this all started happening and people started to promote online training and courses and opportunities and webinars, we just started putting it up there as a place that people could go to find them. So please, if you don't have it on your websites, please do take the link and share it about, because I think it's to the benefit of everyone.
I'm itching to get in the union perspective. I'm sorry I have to do this because I wear two hats. And in particular, there have been a couple of questions, one particular question about companies eager for placements to replace lost staff. And some of what you were saying, Joe, about, and Peter, about length of placements, short notice, need a stage manager next Monday. The prime principle should be, and we should all be aiming to stick to this, is placements are over and above the existing staff needs. There should be alongside the working staff, not replacements for. Okay, rant over.
Yeah, I just wanted to, yeah, absolutely. I wouldn't ever knowingly put a student in a situation where they were show critical. I have been caught out by people who I thought I could trust, and it turned out I couldn't. But often in the commercial theatre, it's because the producers will just not really think about it until, you know, the stage manager will say, "Oh, it'd be lovely to have a placement." It's not a priority, and it becomes a last minute thing. So I feel it's sort of down to us as tutors to make sure that students are safe in those opportunities. Though we can't always get it right.
I agree entirely, and I would expect either or both of Creative and Cultural Skills, our Sector Skills Council, and or BEC2 to collaborate to come up with a framework, a set of guidelines for this is an acceptable framework for a placement.
Well, the SMA have got that already, and that's what I try to look towards with stage management placements. But if other areas of the business want to come up with their guidance, that would be fabulous. It would help us very much.
Yeah, which I'm sure they will do. And we're not an industry that tends to sort of create something generally and think, oh, that's mine, I've got to keep it just to me. They'll put it out there, they'll share it and then borrow it and add to it and whatever. Mig, you're looking thoughtful. Have we got any other questions that you think, areas of questions that are worth tackling in the last 10 minutes?
There's one I can answer if you want, that's just related to maybe
Please.
College students or school students who are taking a gap year, and they want to know how to fill that gap year now if they can't get work placements. One thing that we do as part of our interview process is we set tasks for candidates coming in, and one of those tasks is to take a script and to respond to that script with whatever challenges for your department. So if you're lighting, maybe look at how you would light it, so any kind of theoretical projects like that you can do yourself in the meantime. And I know it's not the same as going into the workplace, and there will be hopefully opportunities for online to talk to employers and things. But the more you can keep those kind of technical solution, creative problem solving, the more that you can keep those muscles working, the better. So do set yourself challenges. And if anybody wants to get in touch with us, I'll be happy to give them examples of things that you could be doing that you can genuinely do by yourself at home. And there'll be great evidence for interviews to come into technical and drama schools of, here's a lighting plan I did, here's a notional prop list that I had to do, or a prompt book that I wrote, or whatever. There's lots of evidence that you can create in that gap year that you could bring to interview if you're applying for technical courses at drama schools in particular. So just to answer that wee question.
Yeah, towards the top of somewhere in the question and answers, which I'm deliberately avoiding answering, questions, detailed ones about are there any guidelines for cleaning equipment, and right down to practical end. These questions, I think, should be in the health and safety end of things, because nobody's developed them yet.
I'm just going to click answer live to that one. So anybody that's asked about, because I sit in lots of different rooms at the moment, they're being worked on is all I can say. So there is some live things starting to open up. So Pirate Crew are actually pivotal at the moment in producing method statements and risk assessments for our crew being on site in various different specialist areas. It's a working document, and that is being shared around the different forums. And like I said, my aim was to get key health and safety people in a room together, which I have done, and they are all working together now to update this information and share it. And again, with cleaning and stuff, it's very important that we need to interpret the government advice and then make it work for our industry also. So there's a complex network of things going on. So if you want to stay up to date with this stuff, you need to follow BECTU, your union, Equity, ABTT, ALD, ASD, all of those people, they're all furiously working in the background to keep all of this current and up to date. Somebody is talking about like a sharing forum and an education forum. It's something we've been talking about for a very long time, isn't it? I think I'm looking at people on the panel about trying to get together. Like I said, the ABTT has a training and education committee. It's quite well represented from different educational institutions. We always would be happy to receive more people to join the conversation. And we meet, how often do we meet, Sebastian? I can't remember. 6 months? I can't remember now. Every 6 months maybe?
No, we meet 4 times a year. So our next one's July, and then October.
So we meet regularly. So there is a platform that the ABTT are hosting, but I know I'm looking at Rachel. She can't see me looking at her, but we have chatted about this, getting us all together, and we're getting us all together in a room. And this may be the thing that makes us do it. But there have been conversations. You're just going to have to bear with us a little bit, because of course, all furiously in the background, we've got all these deadlines of, can you redesign your course? And can you hand that in next week, please? So we're kind of all having to manage those different bits and pieces in the background, but it is in our interest. So that's why I've invited myself into RIMS to find out what everyone else is doing, so I can steal stuff from them. So that was my aim in that area. I'm very pleased to report that in industry and education, we're not tucking it all under and keeping it secret. We're very open and fluid and prepared to share. So hopefully I'm happy. I've got method statements. Somebody asked, you're welcome to see them. They're very crude. They're very crude at the moment, and very very changing. So I mean, I'm just putting my fingers in my ears and hoping that things improve in October, and that social distancing becomes a little less strict. But every week we respond to whatever the new norm is, really. So hopefully, so documents and stuff, yeah, fine, we can share that. That's not a problem. And the hope would be that we would get together and create an education forum.
And back again to ours is an industry that does share. Rachel, you've got a point.
Yeah, I was just going to sort of summarise. I think one of the things that I hope you don't mind me saying, guys, I think to sort of reassure people is that we are all absolutely planning to open in for the new academic year to provide our students with the qualifications and the experience that they deserve and that they're paying for. And that we're doing whatever we need to make that happen. But what we're not doing is saying, no, we're not sure we're going to be here. We're absolutely going to be here for those students. We might have to adapt to the way that we work, and that will be probably an ongoing and creative process, but we invite them to be participants in that and be part of the journey. Obviously, we're sitting working out the solutions now, but as we said before, we'll get feedback from the students about the changes we've made, how it's working as we go through the academic year. And I know that we'll all adapt and share good practice as we're going through the year. And I think maybe that's the opportunity with the forum, is to support each other as we go through next year, so that we have a forum where we can talk about what's working, what isn't working, new ideas that people have got, and we can share good practice.
Thank you. That's a very good segue into what I was planning to do anyways, to go round each of you for a last 1.5 minute comment. Tamykha, do you want to start? Carry on.
Yes, I think basically what I've got from this seminar is to kind of build a community for apprenticeships or people that are not students, that I wanted to find a network, a place to talk, a place to offload. So that's something that I'll be taking back to the ABTT and try and set up. There's also been comments about like diversity in theatre companies. I know this is not really the topic of the conversation, but I just would like to brush up on it. Something that I do champion and try and work hard for, diversity in theatre. At the moment, I don't feel that theatre represents a community that we live in. I am based in London, and when you walk out in London and you walk to theatre, I just don't think that it represents us very well. So that's something that I'm looking into, and also women in theatre. So, I mean, that is slightly off topic, but yes, just trying to promote.
But very important in education, Tamykha, so and very pertinent based on the press that we've currently had at the moment. So don't feel that this isn't a platform for it. The commitment from the ABTT is that we are working in the background. I do somewhat realise I've missed a trick in not scheduling one on diversity. My apologies, it was very rushed. I will work with Tamykha as an ABTT member to schedule something with it needs its own dedicated one, I think, to discuss it, and we are trust me when I tell you that we are furiously working on that in the background.
Okay, I'm going to keep going round. Peter, you want to
just very quickly, I've posted this in answer to a question, but actually I'll progress it further. The university, who's funded by fees, a percentage of those fees go towards bursaries and hardship funds and things like that. And I think that's a really important side of it. So I know we have a hardship fund that students can apply for, which absolutely could, cover things like equipment and so on, because we realise the expense, that can be to do with that. Ditto bursaries. So I think, it's really important that we continue to lobby, our kind of management about those, making those resources available to, students who clearly can't afford them and shouldn't have to afford them, actually. So yeah.
Thank you. Ros, parting comments?
Just absolutely agreeing with Peter there. Of course, there are kind of bursaries and things. My original point was there just isn't the money for everybody to get a laptop. But I think my final point really is just that, I think, we need to move forward. We will move forward, and I think that we will do so in a spirit of positivity and enthusiasm for whatever this virus can throw at us and the situation that we're in. And it's been noted and I think I saw an article about it as well, but it's been noted on several occasions that every time there is some kind of major catastrophe, national catastrophe, theatre may take a hit or the entertainment industry takes a hit, but it comes back. It might not come back in exactly the same way, but it comes back, and reinvents itself. And we're in the industry that can do that. And that's what I was talking about creative problem solving and so on. If any industry can bounce back from this, it's ours. And I think that's what we're trying to really instill in our students, to make sure that they're in a position to start, really helping to bring the industry back to full health, whatever that may look like, because it will probably look very different the way it did, kind of 5-10 years ago. So yeah, I'm doing the positivity, the positive approach is my final comment. Thanks very much.
Excellent, thank you. Jo, your turn.
I'm going to carry on being positive.
Good for you.
technical theatre training doesn't look anything like it did 15 to 20 years ago. And in 15, 20 years' time, it will look unrecognisable to what it looked like, to how it looks now. None of us really know what that looks like. All we can do is move forward, be creative, be problem solvers, and work towards whatever the future is going to throw at us. Somebody put in the Q&A, should industry be following drama schools, or should drama schools be following industry, or whether they said drama schools or universities, I'm not quite sure. And I put both. We need to collaborate, we need to work together. Training institutions are incredibly accountable to this business in a way that you just don't see in other areas. As part of a bigger university, we don't see the chemistry department having to justify themselves on social media to chemists. So we are much more responsive and accountable to the industry. And in the same way, we should just be all collaborating together so that we can move forward and create whatever that new world is. And does this give us an opportunity to solve issues like accessibility to training, the diversity in the industry? Hopefully it will enable us all to think in new ways that start to solve all of those problems. So that's I'm going to end on a positive note as well.
Of course, thank you very much. So over to Mig in a second, following my huge thanks to all my panel for contributing. This has been very lively. And particularly to Alicia and Mig for incredible hard work in arranging these, believe it or not, 10 in 2 days, across 2 days seminars. I don't think we'll ever do such a density again. It's your wind up then, Mig.
Great. Okay, so honestly, fascinating discussion. I think you answered 60 questions. There's about 3 or 4 in there. I did do my best to try and answer them. Some of them I feel merged into other questions, so it was very difficult to know whether we had or hadn't answered them. Alicia has been furiously managing the chat. I believe we can actually make that chat available and save it as a text file, so we might consider doing that, because there was so much going on over there that Alicia and I had one arm each looking at it. But honestly, it's so lovely to have you all in a room together. It stands to reason that I would schedule one as an educator on education. So it was,
you're quite right, Mig. The text file, when I finish the recording, will be saved as the chat will be saved as a text, and I believe the Q&A also gets saved as a separate text.
So we can make that available to you. But I think if I just wanted to end as a panelist saying to you that that I very much wear 2 hats, and I think we all do, because we teach vocational subjects. And that is that we are all intrinsically linked with industry. And at the moment, our efforts and my efforts have been to support the industry that I love that's shut at the moment. So we're all trying to furiously work to do the best that we can, whilst at the same time preserving the training that we need. We need to get our industry up and running, but we mustn't stop training tomorrow's technicians at all either. The two are part and parcel of one another, and it will always be my commitment to do both of those things, hence me inviting myself along to do these seminars. Lovely. Okay, so now taking off my panelist hat, let me just do an outro session for you. So it just remains for me to say thank you to everyone that took part in the panel today. It's been amazing, really thought-provoking. I just want to thank a lot. You saw Alicia, you didn't get to see her in the last one, but she's my webinar partner in crime, and she's an admin guru and a social media extraordinaire, and she's been integral in making all of these happen. I have to thank my place of work, the Guildford School of Acting and the University of Surrey. Without them, we wouldn't have this expensive webinar platform in order to run these, and they've been incredibly supportive of all my extracurricular activities. Today's session, and indeed all of this series of seminars, have been brought to you by the Association of British Theatre Technicians. We find ourselves in very strange times with our industry very much closed. Our hope with these events was to bring you all together to brainstorm and discuss. Our trade organisations more now than ever need your support, and if you'd like to know more about how to join the ABTT as a member, a link's now been put in the chat for you, or you can go and visit our website. We've got a wide range of different memberships available, and we would wholeheartedly welcome you to participate and support us. When you join the ABTT, you very much join a family. You can join in as much as you want to, and that's how I find myself here today. It's also worth noting there's a very good student membership deal. We also have a donate button in the drop down menu of our website if you'd like to support the ABTT further so that we can carry on doing work like this for you. So thank you very much for joining us today. We wish you well and hope to see you. I hope very much to see you not in a Zoom box but out on site again very soon in a theatre, in an event somewhere. So thank you very, very much for being here. This has been recorded. We will probably make it available on the ABTT website. So thank you very much. Hope to see you at some of the others across the rest of today and tomorrow.
Thank you. Bye bye all.